friends. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for joining me in our journey to hope. It is my desire through this podcast to bring you information about how to discover, sustain, or perhaps regain hope. In this episode, we'll be speaking with a new friend of mine, Jamie Allen Vaughn. You know, Jamie, I listened to several of the episodes on your podcast, and I'm going to let you talk about that in just a minute. But the thing that struck me, I really appreciated the passion that comes through when you're talking and your guests as well. And, you know, we share in the cancer survivor community. I don't know if it was you in a previous comment or my daughter that said something about the Cancer Club is not one we want to join, but we are members of it. So anyway, hello, Jamie.
Hello, Dave. It's so good to see you. I appreciate your having me on your show. It's such a pleasure. No, we don't want to be in the club, but on the other side of cancer at this point, for me, it is one of the silver linings, I guess, if you will, that has come out of this journey that was just crazy. And I've met so many amazing people, not just breast cancer patients and survivors, but also people that have had other kinds of cancers, such as yourself. So I just think this is really a thrill to be on your show. So thank you. Well,
it's my honor. It truly is. And, you know, I've always been aware. People would say, so-and-so has cancer, or I've had cancer, or whatever. And I understood that and had a level of empathy, or whatever the case is. I hesitate to say the word sympathy because I did not want sympathy. Thank you very much. But yeah, I understood how they feel. But wow. I now understand how they feel.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, for me, it's like when before I had breast cancer, it's not that I knew that I thought that I was immune to it, but it was at that point, you know, things that happened to other people. Yeah. Right. And because that's all I ever knew is cancer happening to other people. And so now I am definitely on the other side of that thought process.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and as we have discussed, my daughter had lymphoma 5 years ago. That really hit us like an explosion because there's no family history or anything in it. And then a few years later, I had my leukemia. But anyway, I do appreciate that you've agreed to be a guest. So let's kind of get started with talking about what we want to talk about. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and of course, want to know about your podcast.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Jamie Vaughn, and I am from Reno, Nevada. And before cancer, I was a school teacher. I taught middle and high school English language arts and social studies. And I have always had a side job, side business, very busy girl. And about 4 years prior to my diagnosis, I lost my mother, who was my everything. She was, she was my best friend. She was just the best mom that you could ever ask for. And that's when my life really, looking back in hindsight, really started to change, my thought process about life. And leading up to my breast cancer, excuse me, I had a lot of stress and trauma, let's just put it that way. And when I received my breast cancer diagnosis in June of 2022, it was literally 1 week after I had an enormous retirement party. My husband, Farrell, who I've been married to, we've been together for about 21 years. We've been married for almost 20. He had retired the year before, and we had all kinds of plans and, for travel and all the things. And so we had this big party, and about slightly before my retirement party, I got a little message on my phone saying, hey, it's time for your mammogram. And I've been always very, very good at taking care of my breast health and any, female health that I needed to take care of. I always listened to my body, get a mammogram every single year. And I picked up the phone to make an appointment to get my mammogram. And my husband and I were sitting out front of the house, sitting in the sunshine. And they asked me if I'd felt anything and if anything was different. And I said, nah, they'll find out. And my appointment was going to be 3 weeks later. So I thought so I said no. And I hung up the phone. And my husband said, that's actually not true. You do feel a lump and you have felt interesting sensations in your breast. And I said, you're right. Why did I say no? Because I'm always listening to my body. And just a little backstory, all that spring, as leading up to my retirement, I actually did feel a lump and it was different. And I did feel burning sensations and twinges, and things like that. And I guess I was just so busy and that I would just be like, what was that? And so I picked the phone back up and said, that's not true. I do feel a lump, and I normally feel lumps because women with dense breast tissue, they always feel lumps in their breasts. And I've had 2 lumpectomies in the past 10 years, and they were benign. And I said, but also I've felt sensations. So they actually moved my mammogram up by 3 weeks. And I went in literally the Tuesday after my retirement party, and I had my mammogram, and I knew right away that something was wrong. Because they don't usually come back and say, hey, the radiologist wants to see you. So, and then of course I also know the look on the face of the nurse who is doing the ultrasounds. So I went in and talked to the radiologist, and that's when he said that I had some groupings of calcifications that were concerning with an associated mass. And so I just happened to have a really good friend who's a radiologist at our breast center here, who I normally go to, who just happened to be at my retirement party a few days prior. And I called him up and I shared the results with him. And he phoned me that night and said that it is a 95% chance or more that it is breast cancer. And he was able to get my biopsy moved up to that Friday. I got my biopsy, and I found out 24 hours later on June 11 at 3:30 in the afternoon, when I was camping with my husband and a couple of friends, that it was in fact breast cancer. And so that is really the turning point of my life. And I was like, okay, I guess my retirement's not going to be the way I thought it was going to be. No. So I guess before breast cancer, it was what happened to other people, and now I am a statistic. I'm in a 1 in 8 statistic, and I've gone through treatment. I don't know if you want me to keep going on my treatment and all that, but I
mean, we can. It's important that folks understand the journey you went through, and some of the things, the challenges, the highs and lows, and that sort of thing. And of course, you now have a podcast that is a spinoff of all this experience, and so we want to talk about that too. So, a couple of things I did hear I wanted to comment on, and the way my brain is right now, I take notes. I learned, as you experienced, don't hesitate and don't brush it off, self-diagnose. If it's unusual, somebody needs to know, and let them do that, because things happen, and we're not specialists in it. And so thankfully, you took advantage of the time, and time is so critical. So that was just my 2 cents worth for right now. Time was everything in my case, and it's amazing, isn't it, how fast sometimes these conditions advance on us. And so we...
Yeah, because less than a year prior to that, I had a mammogram, And I always get a diagnostics mammogram with an ultrasound, and they didn't see anything. And so just knowing that when they found the tumor, it was 5 centimeters, if that gives you an indication of how fast these things, mine was very aggressive. And so, yes, well, timing was of the essence.
Sorry. I had just had my annual wellness check not 3 months before, and everything was great. But of course, they're not testing the full blood workup that they would in trying to determine. But anyway, so yeah, go ahead. How did when you first got confirmation? Okay, this is what it is. What were your thoughts and what were your feelings on that? And how did you feel about that? And yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really loaded question, because I had all the feels. I was angry. I was confused. I was devastated, and I was angry that my mother wasn't there. I was very fearful. And people, it was interesting because I'm a pretty open person. I always have been. I'm an open book. People know my life. I have 3 wonderful stepchildren. I have, 2 dogs, one that has since passed away. She took care of me all through my cancer treatment and all of that. A wonderful husband and just a really good life. And so I was really confused and devastated. So when I came out on social media that I had gotten breast cancer, there were some comments that were really interesting to me. They said things like, "Oh my gosh, Jamie, but you were so healthy." And that really confused me, because it was kind of this implication of what did you do?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what did you do that, or you aren't healthy. How did you get cancer if you were so healthy?
Right.
And it occurred to me that people didn't understand that apparently, I don't know, surprise, surprise, healthy people, because yes, I am a very healthy person. I take care of myself. I eat right. I don't drink too much. In fact, I wasn't even hardly drinking at all at that point. But healthy people can get cancer too.
Yes, they can. My mother is a health coach, nutrition-oriented person, and other than being a little bit older and overweight, I was fairly healthy myself. So yes, and that's such a strong point. Healthy people, you bet.
Yeah, and so that is one of the missions that's one of the things that I really like to let people know. It's like, hey, by the way, we all have cancer cells. It's just a matter of the circumstances that opens us up to being struck with cancer. And are there we can't beat ourselves up and go, gosh, what did I do? I did this to myself. What could I have done better? Because that's just like one of my friends that I interviewed on the podcast. She said, we can't beat ourselves up. Like, this is not your fault. And it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we
so
are
to
not,
speak, that you go down.
You are not a bad person because
no, it has nothing to do with a moral. Yeah, it's no moral failure or anything like that. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like karma coming back at me for something I did or whatever. But no, I mean, and so no, I was healthy. I am healthy. I was healthy all the way through my cancer, and I ate right and all that, and so. I went through the chemo. I got my port installed, and I was a wreck, Dave, to be honest with you. I was a complete wreck. And this was about the end of June, and I had some nervous breakdowns where my surgeon who put the port in had to talk me off the ledge, if so to speak, because I was in a very, very deep, dark place, and I was scared of being in that place. And I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to pull myself out. And so at some point, I reached out to a therapist, Eddie Enever in Australia. I found him on Facebook, and I was really drawn in by his content, his material. He's a 3-time cancer survivor, and he had sort of found a way to help people through this journey. And, and so I reached out to him that night in the middle of the night, and I said, my name is Jamie Vaughn, and I actually interviewed him on my podcast. It's a great episode. And I said, I'm scared. I got to tell you, I'm in a deep, dark place, and I need help. So he put his proverbial hand out there and drug me out of that deep, dark hole I was in, and was able to help me through. And I, started my chemo. I, had 5 of the 6 rounds that I was prescribed, and, lost my hair and all the things. And you know what I did? I started a private Facebook group, and I told the good, the bad, the ugly. I went live. People saw me going bald. People saw me, my husband shaving my head. I just put it out there. And that, for me, was the secret sauce in helping me get through, because it really created an amazing community of people who rallied around me, and I was able to, kind of sort of massage my my emotions, and allow myself to feel that way, and not stay in the bad emotions. And they're not bad; they're human, right? They are human emotions, and so I allowed myself to walk through all of those emotions, feel it all, and then, and here I am. And so the podcast was born out of this idea, and this very important idea, that early detection is where it's at. Yeah. And so test those breasts, test those breasts, test those breasts, test those breasts. And it was interesting because I had a conversation with a male breast cancer survivor this morning from the UK. And he told me, he's out there helping the breast cancer community as well. He's amazing. And he says, I'm trying to pop out and make sure that the messages that we're getting out to people who have yet to be diagnosed is happening, because we're in a community of people who already know what it's like to have breast cancer. And, so we're telling people to feel it on the first. When we already know this, because we've been through it, how do we reach all the other people? And so I remedy that by, when I make a post on Instagram, I also share it to my personal pages. And so I share my podcast episodes with my personal pages, and because those are going out to all kinds of people who have never even been diagnosed.
And Jamie, I want to share with you just a second. I was out looking at different podcasts, and I love to see what folks are doing and get some ideas. And I came across this crazy looking podcast that said, test those breasts. And I go, okay, this is going to be interesting. And it was. It really was.
Well, I'm really glad, because that was sort of the idea, is to capture the eyes of, capture the eyes of people, because when I first started the podcast, my husband and I, actually, we were sitting in the hot tub one night, and I said, I need to come up with a really good name. And he's actually the one that came up with the name, because when it all comes down to it, early detection is where it's at.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, so people need to get their butts out there and test their breasts. And so I thought that was a very catchy name. And then I put it out there to social media and said, hey, I need a logo. And one of my former colleagues, all I told him was the name. He knew I had breast cancer, and I just said the name, and he came back with the owl, and the little eyes are kind of, little pink areolas, I guess you'd call them. And it's interesting because the owl is my sort of spirit animal for my mom. And so he obviously remembered that I loved owls, but it also symbolizes wisdom. And then, of course, the eyes are eyes, and then they're also double as breasts. And so it's kind of appealing and capturing in that way as well. But testing those breasts, because we can talk about all kinds of things. We can talk about chemo. We can talk about surgery and radiation and all the things. But if we can get people out there to pay attention to their health and things that, intuitively they're knowing that something's not right, and they know what age they are and whether they have, cancer in their family, and they can take those precautions and go and testing, whether it be your breasts or whatever, early detection is where it's at. The earlier we can find it, the earlier they can find it, the more manageable. And I'm never going to say that it's easy, because it is never easy. Oh, no. But it's more manageable, and the chances of you getting through it and actually living is way better. So test those breasts, and it came out of, Dave, after I had my first breast surgery in December of 2022, almost a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Most people are like, oh, yay, you get to get back to normal. You're cancer free. Everything's okay. And the truth of the matter is that it doesn't work that way. And I realized very quickly that PTSD is a real thing in cancer patients. Yeah. Yes. And that didn't occur with me until just this past September or October. September or October was almost a year from when I was cancer free, and I got my PTSD then. But in February of 2023 is when I started with the depression, and really, really having a hard time with, I don't have any purpose in this world. Like, I don't have any significance. I used to have a lot of significance before cancer.
The teaching profession would have.
Yeah, my teaching. I mean, I had a lot of purpose, a lot of significance. And then even through cancer, obviously I had significance because people were caring about me and I had a lot to do. But after cancer, I was not feeling that way. And it really threw me into a major depression. And it was then that I needed to realize I need to do something that's going to pull me out of this depression. And that's when the podcast was born. I said, I need to talk about this, and I need to talk to other people about this and be part of the community at large, and send, and just be part of helping, so that's where that was born. Okay.
I was shocked with feeling that post-traumatic stress. I'm retired military, and I've been in some stressful situations. And I thought, okay, I've got this. And it was after I got out of treatment that it hit me. I had two things that hit me. One was, especially on anniversaries of something that happened. This past Sunday was the second anniversary of when my symptoms for leukemia started. And so that, and I talked to my doctor about it, which, by the way, do that. Talk to somebody about it. And he talked to me about it, and I really appreciated him for that. But then I started feeling, you called it depression. I'm not sure if I felt depression, but I felt guilt, survivor guilt. Why me? What have I, because I know people whose family members have died, and people about that. And you use the expression purpose. And I began to look at it under the advice of others. Hey, you don't feel the guilt. Well, understand the guilt, excuse me. But purpose is so important. You found it with the podcast. I have too. And in my own personal ministry that I work with people, and also in volunteering. So there's lots of, Okay, I'm taking up your time, but I wanted to share something that is so very important that I have discovered over the last year or so in researching about hope and all of that is you got to get out of yourself and you got to start looking at others and looking to help others, and you'll recover a lot in that time. And so that's how I was able to do it. And so I advise people, understand it's a real emotion, just like the fear was, just like the depression and the disappointment. So get out of yourself, start helping folks, and you'll turn that around. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sermonize there, but it's
no. It's so important to say it loud for the people in the back, because so many people feel this way, and one of the reasons is
it's easy to become isolated in that condition.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I really encourage people to get connected immediately. And because I still know people who are going through breast cancer or went through it without getting themselves connected. And it is a clear difference in the way I was able to handle it versus how they were able to handle it or not handle it.
I talk about it in my book. I didn't want to make the book on Journey to Hope about myself or even the podcast, but I shared with it. My publisher said, look, you need to tell it so folks know you've been there. So in the introduction, I talk about it, but I talk about a lady named Jane McCarthy. She was my volunteer that really meant a lot to me. The first day that I was in outpatient care, I could not even stand on the scales by myself. I had to be in a wheelchair, have a walker, that kind of thing. And she helped me, and she came over to where I was sitting, and she said, okay, Mr. Dave, I want to take you around. Your nurse is going to be Brentley, which, by the way, what a wonderful lady she was. But anyway, going to go see Brentley. And we're walking down the hallway. And I sometimes get emotional when I talk about this, so I'll apologize now. But we're walking down the hallway, and Jane's maybe 5'6", and I'm 6 foot plus. So she's got her arm around me, and I'm limping down the hallway, an old man, and I said, Jane, you're making me feel like I'm your only patient. And she said, well, to me, you are. And then she said, no one walks alone. That meant so much. That has actually become our motto at the Cancer Center. And so anyway, that meant a lot to me, and that became part of the title of my book. And again, I didn't mean to chase that, but what you're saying and what I just said is don't be alone. You are not.
Yeah.
You are not alone. I have a basket at my house that I will keep forever. It's packed full of cards that people sent me, some of them across from the world. People that would say, we're praying for you, we're with you, hang in there. And it just meant so much. It really did.
Yeah, it really does. And I just really love the fact that you shared that, because once people do get connected, every community has something, and that may not be as large as other communities, but there are communities out there who can really help you through. And one of the things, Dave, I think for some people is that, and things have changed over time, the older generation, what I have really experienced with talking with other women, and I haven't spoken to a lot of men yet about breast cancer, and that is one of the missions that I've got going on, because
I'm glad.
I think it's really important to understand that we're talking about more than just women, and so. But what I have heard, and this is a pattern I've heard, is that the older generation, they were not open because it was just a secret. Like, there were so many women that I've spoken to that they really didn't even know their mom had breast cancer or their grandmother had breast cancer, because it was like sort of kept under wraps. It was like taboo to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I am so thrilled that things have changed over time, and people are reaching out and they are talking about it and being loud about it. I do think that the reason people are able to get through it the way that they're able to get through it is because of that. So not to say that, some women who kept it under wraps didn't survive, but the emotions that go along with that, that's all part. It's not just about the treatments. It's about your mental health as well. So yeah, we don't walk it alone, and you don't have to walk it alone. And it's probably important not to walk it alone.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
While we were on break, by the way, I wanted to share this with you. I'm going to have a discussion in a couple of weeks with a young lady that very, very special to us. She is a cancer survivor, breast cancer survivor. She was there as a personal friend of my daughter going through her cancer. So I contacted her and said, I'd love to have you as a guest. And she just texted me and she said her husband, Paul, has agreed to be on the podcast with us. Would you like him to talk about being a caregiver? Oh, yes.
Yes.
Caregivers are incredible to us. When I have a caregiver, I almost always do, when somebody's at the cancer center, the caregivers, we love on them big time. We help them, we let them know how critical they are to all of this. And
yeah, I've had two episodes. Excuse me. We were interviewed. My friend John interviewed me and my husband earlier on in the podcast, and we talked about the journey that we've gone through, the good, the bad, the ugly, and because it was not all roses and and so. But I also interviewed two gentlemen who are caregivers to their wives who have metastatic breast cancer, or not breast cancer, but I think one started with breast cancer. But anyway, they both have totally different types of cancers, but they are caregivers, and they gave me some wonderful insight about their perspective. And I thought that was really important. And I want to go back real quickly.
Sure.
To when you mentioned that you are a veteran, and you understand what PTSD is as far as where the military comes into play, right? And so we need to make that that kind of crossover and understanding that PTSD, it's trauma. So PTSD can happen with any kind of trauma. And it's interesting because one of the guys that I interviewed as the caregiver is also a veteran, and he, just a real strong, man who actually, he got a little teary-eyed on my podcast talking about this. So I love the fact that there are people out there like you who are normalizing PTSD and happening in different circumstances of trauma, but also normalizing the importance of walking into your emotions and understanding those emotions. And so thank you for really, really bringing that to light, because it's so important that people don't feel bad about feeling certain ways, and, like, stay strong. Of course we're going to stay strong,
Well, two things about that. I'm a manly man. The first night I was in the hospital, and they were dumping bags of platelets in me because my body was basically bleeding out, and I had a panic attack. Did not know it at the time. Thought I was having a heart attack. And but my charge nurse came in, and she pointed to the monitor. She says, "We know everything that's going on with you," and she shooed everybody out, shut down everything except life support. And she and I talked for about an hour. And she said, "Excuse me, hang on, I'll edit this part out." She said,
"No, you should not edit that part out, Dave."
She said, "No." I told her, says, "Ashley, why am I feeling fear? I'm a man of faith. I faced things before." And she said, "No, welcome to the human race." And she said, "You control it. You don't let it control you." And that really meant a lot. So anyway, what you're saying is very true.
Yeah. And it's and those panic attacks are real, and they feel so you feel like you're so out of control. And so I'm
That
so
was
glad
it.
that
Yeah.
that charge nurse, yeah, I'm so glad she was there for you,
Oh, yeah.
and that you recognize that you are actually a human being, and here's the thing, when I said, when people say things like stay strong, staying strong doesn't mean not feeling the emotions and showing your emotions. Being strong actually is just completely the opposite. Being strong is absolutely normalizing being a human being.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And we need to change the narrative and the understanding of what society thinks we should and should not be when we're going through something like this. And so that's my own 2 cents on that.
Well, I appreciate it. And again, that's just something that now I've discovered and I understand it. And yeah, it's still
Yeah.
there though.
And
It'll always
you
be
better not edit that part out, because that is the human part of Dave. And
there.
you know,
Yeah.
I think you're sweet. I love
Well,
it.
all right. Um, uh, so I appreciate that you're doing the podcast, and others are as well. And well, and it's not just about breast cancer. That's just one of the areas where we can talk about. One of the things, though, shifting gears a little bit, that I came to appreciate, I had to learn a whole new level of humility, because I've always been the guy in charge. I'm the guy, people would come to me and ask for advice or help, or I'm there. And now all of a sudden, like I mentioned about the volunteer having to help me stand on the scales and that kind of stuff, completely at, somebody was taking care of me. But I came to love those people so much. The caregivers, the professional staff, yes. But the people who prepared meals, the people who cleaned the room, the drill sergeant, physical therapist,
The people that helped you go to the bathroom. Yeah.
well,
Helped you take a shower. Yeah. That's
yeah,
yeah.
I learned I can do that. But it was either that or the head nurse said she was going to put me in one of those little nighties with the back open if I got out of bed by myself again. But anyway, so talk about that, your experience with the people that you don't even know who all of them are.
Right.
Appreciate it.
One of the things I will say, when I had my breast surgery, I had my breast surgery in New Orleans at Center for Restorative Breast Surgery. That was a whole new level of humility. I had the deep flap surgery, and that is a no joke of a surgery. I just had my second phase 3 weeks ago. I had my second phase, where I had nurses come in all throughout the night, check my breasts, make sure that they were doing okay, emptying my drains, training my husband how to do all of that as well, and taking me to the bathroom, showering me, and things like that. So having those nurses be there for you to support you and help you do those things, I can't even, there are no words how much I appreciate every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I will never forget them.
Yeah.
And, and so then my husband, of course, we talk about in sickness and in health. And because when I first was diagnosed, I said, you didn't sign up for this. And then I realized, oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah,
I guess you did. And so it just happened to me first to go through something like this. And so he had to help me shower. He has had to help me put my girdle on after surgeries and, go to the bathroom for a little bit, give me shots in the back of my arm. And, so even that was really interesting, a whole new level of care from your husband. And so, I appreciate that so much as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, those nurses are the PAs and the nurses that come in the middle of the night. Wonderful. The ones who give you, I had to get blood transfusions for quite some time because I developed a rare anemia due to a thymoma tumor I had that they found, at the time they found the breast cancer, so I've been in those infusion centers getting those, getting blood transfusions, and all of them, I just appreciate them so much.
And you talk about come in the middle of the night. I had the young med tech that would come in, and she said, "Mr. Dave, I've got to stick your finger again. I was having trouble with insulin, just part of the side effects of everything." And so they had to check it twice a day, and she'd come in and wake me up at 3 o'clock and, all that. And I'd give her a hug as I could. I said, "You do whatever you need to do. Which finger you want today?"
Yeah.
And I always appreciated them so much. They were so compassionate and understanding, and not just for me, but for my wife as my caregiver, which, by the way, she got back at me. She had hip surgery not long ago, and I had to but I loved it. I did.
It's really interesting.
A little bit. I said, "Oh, you're making me wash dishes. You're making me cook,"
Yeah, and it's really interesting because my husband has had 2 hip surgeries.
Okay.
He's gotten both of his hip replacements, and now I feel like I didn't do that much, I did things, but he did so much more for me because of my circumstances.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, next time that something like this happens to him, I know that I have my work cut out for me. So.
And part of the reason I went on this train of thought is I want folks out there that are experiencing cancer to know that there's a lot of people that love them and absolutely want to help them. And don't be afraid, and don't shut yourself in. Please don't.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that you and I talked about was what advice would I give to, what would I leave with people? And that really truly is, number one, test your breasts.
Yeah.
If you have not been diagnosed, other people, it's not just other people who get it. 1 in 8 women get it. The statistics for men, I don't know the exact parts, but everyone needs to pay attention to their health and what they're feeling and their intuition and all of that, and understand that while you are very, very, very special, you're not so special that you can't get breast cancer. Right. So you need to test those breasts. But even more importantly, I shouldn't say even more, equally as importantly, is if you are diagnosed, plug yourself in to the community.
Yeah.
Talk to people. And so, I cannot emphasize that enough. And I'm not saying go out on social media and blare all your everything. That is not something, you don't have to do what I did.
That's right.
But at least plug yourself into the community.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're there for. And you can find so much strength and knowledge and awareness through and support through them that it can make your journey a whole heck of a lot better.
Yeah, and it'll help you heal mentally as well as physically. It truly does.
Yeah.
And you might not see something, they will
right away. Yeah. But also, if you get into a group too, like a support group that you do not feel comfortable in, and you're not feeling like you're getting something out of it, like it's not filling your cups, something's going, like you don't feel right about it. It doesn't mean that it's not a good organization. It just means that it might not be the one for you. And so reaching out to other survivors who have found support, really good support, elsewhere or whatever, it's kind of like choosing your doctor. If you have the choice to choose your doctor, you want to feel comfortable, or a therapist. I started seeing a therapist right away, and luckily I just happened to really like her, and we still see each other today. So
okay, good. Okay. By the way, I'm going to have an interview coming up later toward the end of the month with Women of Hope, which is a wonderful organization that's out there to support women, especially with breast cancer. And there's just so many other, and I tell people, if there's not one, start one.
Yeah. And I'd like to find a support group for men. I would like to find one specific to breast cancer for men. I'd love to be able to talk with them. So if you ever come across something.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll ask about that around and see if there is something like that. That's good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, what else would you like to share with us, my friend?
I just really appreciate what you are doing with your podcast and the voices that you are allowing to be heard. And I love this conversational type of format that you have. It's very comfortable. And I think people like that. And I just thank you. I appreciate your having me on to tell my story. And if people want to reach out to me on Instagram, I'm on Test Those Breasts. You can put it in the show notes if you'd like. I think you have it, but I'll send it to you. I also have a private Facebook group called Test Those Breasts. Go figure. I'm on LinkedIn under Jamie Allen Vaughn. I'm on TikTok under Test Those Breasts. And Dave, I just started a YouTube channel and
okay.
I have all of my episodes. I have 35 episodes that I have released so far.
Friends, please accept my apologies for some technical glitches in this episode. There were some internet issues that started and I lost some of the final thoughts from Jamie. Please go to her podcast, Test Those Breaths, and her Facebook and YouTube channel. Okay, well, Jamie, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast, a very special podcast, and thank you for your patience as well, as we've had a couple of technical glitches, but that happens.
Yes, it does. I'm definitely aware of that. Well, I appreciate you too, Dave. I appreciate, the fact that your vulnerability and your ability to, kind of spotlight so many stories such as mine. And I just appreciate what you do. And thank you for having me on.
Well, it's not about us. It's about each other. And as we said,
storytelling.
We are not alone. We're there for everybody. Okay. Well, friends, thank you for joining me as together we journey to hope. I truly hope that we have encouraged you to discover, sustain, or regain hope through this effort. I invite you to contact me if you have any questions or comments, or you wish to share with me something you've experienced in your journey to hope. I've really appreciated as I said, my new friend, Jamie. Well, my email is ourjourneytohope@gmail.com. That's ourjourney and the number 2 hope@gmail.com. And please share this podcast with someone whose hope is being challenged. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Again, I'm Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for listening. And until our next episode, remember, we give all glory to God our Father.